Awesome. Welcome everyone to Tech Talks by Collab Lab. So super excited to have Rahat here talking about how to become a developer by building a product. A couple little kind of housekeeping things. This is sponsored by the Collab Lab, so I wanted to just kind of, share with you all what that is. So I'm Andrew. I'm the founder of the Collab Lab. The Collab Lab is a US-based nonprofit that helps early career developers learn, just how professional software teams work together. So, there are some things that are really hard to sort of simulate if you're just, studying on your own. Even a lot of boot camps don't do a great job of this, but even though they try, and those things are, pair programming, how to write a great PR, how to review each other's code, demoing your work, participating in retrospectives, kind of improving your process as a team and those kinds of things. So that's all the stuff that the Collab Lab teaches. We don't teach code exactly, but kind of comes along for the ride. It's really about those collaborative skills. And so people who've come through the program have reported back to us that they feel a lot more confident in technical interviews or kind of developer interviews, because they have a little more context when the conversation turns from the actual coding to sort of how teams work together. We also do a thing called Career Lab, where we help people kind of get better at getting the interviews and then do better in the interviews. So we have those kind of two programs that we run. But so if you want more information about that, the collablab.co's is the website. You can find that there. So everyone knows the meeting is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable being on camera, totally fine. You can face mute for the duration, no problem at all. We will post a link to YouTube of the talk later. We have a live captioning available. So if you would find that helpful, just hit the closed caption button in the controls at the bottom middle of the screen. It's live. It's automated, so it's not always accurate, and it is sometimes hilarious. As everything that we do here at Collab Lab, this meeting is sort of governed by our code of conduct. So if you have questions about what that is, it boils down to, don't do anything jerky to each other, right? But there are some specifics in there. If you're interested, you can read about that on the website. And then, we are a nonprofit. It's all volunteer driven, and it's free for people to participate. So, if you are in a position to give some, it does help us out. We have operating expenses that we have like a GitHub sponsors page where we kind of cover our operating expenses. So at some point, I know some of you are either in boot camps or just out of boot camps. Maybe somewhere down the line, you get that first juicy developer job, and you can come back to us and give us a couple bucks. But with that, that's kind of the housekeeping stuff out of the way. I'll turn it over to Rachel to introduce Rahat.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I am a former participant in the Collab Lab, both the regular and the advanced project. And now I help Andrew, and I just volunteer and help run the Tech Talks. Just keep giving back to them because I think they're wonderful. But I was going to introduce Rahat, who's the speaker for this evening. He is a full stack web developer this is his second career. He has a background in customer support, management, and training. He is a graduate of the Columbia University Coding Bootcamp, where I think he's still a TA because one of his students is here tonight as well. So that's exciting. And then in his spare time, he likes to play video games, write, rap, and record music. So welcome, and we're excited for your talk. I'm going to stop sharing the video, and so you can share what you need to when you're a host.
Cool. Is that showing?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Looks
cool.
Great.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, both of you, for having me on. Really happy to be able to do this talk. So yeah, this talk is called Build a Product, Become a Developer. Some of the things we're going to be talking about are sort of like a few things that can help you kind of like stand out as you're looking for your first developer job. And even some of these things are also applicable like throughout your career, whenever you're looking for something new, trying to advance in your career or anything like that. Before we dive into that, just a little bit more on me. Rahat, I'm a founder at a company called Windor. I have also founded two micro SaaS startups called Harkin and Hardup. I'm a front-end engineer at Simple Health. You can find me on Twitter at Rahat Codes or at Windor.io. Cool. So I'm just going to throw like 3 quotes onto the page. These are things you've probably maybe heard if you're active on Twitter or just like online anywhere if you're looking for advice. Keep building, and the more projects you build, the more you learn. This is true. This is awesome for learning. The more you actually like apply the things that you learn from like boot camp, a tutorial, whatever, and into some type of like project, you'll be able to apply those and practice those skills a little bit more. Tutorials are cool, but it will only get you so far. Also very true. There's a purgatory called tutorial hell, where I found myself in when I was first starting in, where I couldn't really begin a project unless I pulled up like a Udemy course or some YouTube video until like someone like had me, starting off and kind of just like copying all the code that they were writing. And the last thing is build products and add values to your users. This is where I want to sort of take everyone's mindset and what I hope you kind of take away from this talk a little bit. Because when you're on the job, on your first job or whatever job you're doing as a developer, you're not building projects, you're building products and you're trying to add value to someone, whether it's like some end user, some stakeholders, whatever it is. And you should try to build your project, instead of building projects, try to build products with a certain end user in mind. I heard this from someone named Jerome Hardaway, who runs That's Who Code. We had a conversation and he told me like, stop building projects, start building, projects, stop building projects, start building products. And I realized that I had been kind of doing this throughout my entire career, but I just never really put it into like a specific mindset till now. So the very first thing that most people kind of ask before they actually dive into something like this is, how the hell do I come up with an idea, right? I want to make something. I want to make something really cool, but I have no idea what to make unless I like pull up a tutorial or something. So the first thing we're going to kind of go through is just like how to ideate, how to come up with something. The first thing I like to ask is, what's your problem? Is there a specific problem that you're having that you can use technology to improve in everyday life? It doesn't have to be anything huge, doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking, just a small problem. See if you can build something that can like help you with it. One of the things that we're going to be kind of going through in this talk, just like a little silly idea, is like a problem that a friend of mine has been having is that, and the friend is me, is that every time it rains, I forget to bring my umbrella and go out when I go outside, and now I'm getting wet. So we're going to try to solve that problem somehow. But some other ways to like ideate is if you can't really think of something that maybe you're facing that you can try to solve, or any of your friends, families, people in your community having some sort of problem that you can like add value to with your technology, maybe try building something in that space. Other places that I've personally been able to like gather ideas from is like joining a hackathon. I like joining hackathons from time to time just to like get ideas from other people, see what other people are building, and just learn. And then the fourth thing to consider is like, just look at any existing product that's out there and see if you can build like a small version of it with a specific feature it doesn't have that you wish it had. And just create a micro version of that and see what you can do. A lot of the things that are out there and successful are not new ideas. You don't need to build something like disruptive or totally brand new. Just build something that's useful for you. The next thing that usually comes up after this is, I don't know enough to do this. Most people are thinking, okay, I have this cool idea now, but there's no way I can actually tackle this, no way I can actually go about, building out this product that I want to launch. Truth is, you probably do know enough. If you've gone through some tutorials, gone through some CRUD functionality, maybe you've like done a React tutorial and like made a to-do list and a node maybe some backend stuff and done some like CRUD functionality there. If you've done that much, you probably know enough to get you 90% of the way there. And the other 10%, you're going to figure that out. And that's the whole point. Because when you're on the job, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to be able to just pull every single idea or piece of code out of your head. You're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to think things through, steal stuff from Stack Overflow. All of that is cool. All that is stuff that you're going to have to be doing throughout your entire career. So before we like really dive into the idea that we're going to be solving, a few things to consider when we're thinking up of our idea. First, the client. When we build on the job, again, we're building for someone. So who is it that we're building for? The project itself. When you're doing this, do not worry about perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect. Build an MVP that kind of sort of works and release that and just iterate on it. Then the tech. Focus on tech that helps you showcase your skills. If you're a front-end developer, maybe you want to use some tech that like manages the back end more easily for you. Or you're a back-end developer, maybe you want to do something like using WordPress or using something like some templates or like Bootstrap or something on the front end just to help you like get a decent looking front end out. Doesn't matter. Focus on like what you want to actually showcase as your skill. And the last thing, the plan. How are we going to get this out? So we're going to bring back the problem that I mentioned before. My friend always forgets to take an umbrella out with them when it's raining. Silly problem, a real problem that people probably have all the time. You go outside, you forget your umbrella, you get wet. So we're going to look at two approaches for tackling this. First is more of a backend focused one. So if you're sort of a backend dev or wanting to go into that kind of thing, this is a potential way you can maybe solve this problem. So the first thing, the client, who's our client, our forgetful friend, or me. Two, the project. Let's say we want to send a text alert to our friend, letting them know that it's raining, they should grab an umbrella. The tech, after a little bit of research, I saw that I could probably use the Twilio API and some of their serverless functions, which allows me to create a phone number and actually text people with it. And there's the Open Weather Map API, where I can look at the person's location, figure out if it's raining or not. And the plan is to use some backend framework, interact with those two APIs, and ship some product that sends a text message to this person whenever it's raining. So that's the backend approach. Let's go to a more front-end approach. Again, client is still your forgetful friend. Two, the project this time, it's a website that they can go to check for their umbrella needs. So the tech here would just be HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, as well as the Open Weather Map API. And the plan here is we're just going to use some front-end tech to hit those APIs and just build a visual version of that text-based thing that we were just talking about. So two approaches. That's two of many approaches that you can take for this problem. The thing with any of these product ideas that you might come up with, there's multiple ways to tackle them. I just like kind of put together something that sort of came off the top of my head of like how I would want to maybe approach this in a fun way. And these are some of the things that I would want to use when I'm actually doing this. But if we use all this stuff and build what I just said we were going to build, did we actually solve the problem? Let's go back to it. My friend always forgets to take an umbrella out with them when it's raining. If I'm just building something, let's say this text-based application, this will probably require them to text the number that I have built, which will hit whatever API that I build, and then let them know that it's raining. But that requires them to remember to text this number. Second one, the front-end focus one, they still can get the information of like whether it's raining or not, but they have to remember to open a website. So in both of these cases, we're not solving the real problem. The real problem is that they're forgetful. So we have to figure out a way to remind them. So what do we need to actually ship our product? So the first way we can do this, if we're looking at a front-end kind of approach, is creating a progressive web app. Maybe we can let our friends save the website to their device as a PWA, send them notifications based on when it's going to rain. That's one way. We can look into cron jobs running on our backend for text. Maybe once a day, we can check our API, check their location, see if it's raining, and if it is, send them a text, letting them know to grab an umbrella. And in both of these cases, I needed something a little bit extra beyond beyond like just that basic CRUD functionality or basically like hitting the API. And that's that like that 10% piece that you're going to have to like look into and figure out and like understand, like figure out like how to like push out your product. But if we look at these two approaches, both of these give me kind of like a structured learning path for ways to add value to people. In one case, I have to learn what a progressive web app is. I have to learn how it is that that person can save it to their device. I have to learn how to send them notifications from it. I have to learn, some type of like real-time system for actually sending those notifications. And in the other side of things, if I were doing the backend approach, now I have to learn about cron jobs. I have to learn how to run a cron job, what a cron job is, and figure out how to text this person based on a certain interval of time. So here, rather than going out and just kind of like picking whatever the most popular technology there is out there, you're specifically hunting for information that'll help you solve a problem, which is now an awesome story that you have that you can tell to someone who's interviewing you of like, yeah, I needed to do this for my client. They don't need to know the client is your friend. And I was able to add value because I figured out how to create this progressive web app that gave them notifications, and they no longer forgot to take an umbrella when it's raining. Same kind of thing for the cron job with text. So just to kind of summarize that little bit of flow there, the way this is kind of like how I try to think through all the different things that I'm building. So first thing is like, again, what's the problem? Our forgetful friend is always getting wet and they forget their umbrella. What do we need to solve it? We need to figure out when it rains so we can alert them to the fact that they need an umbrella. How do we get what we need? We can get that information from an API presented either via web interface or through that text-based interface. How do we deliver what we need? We can send them notifications or texts to alert them that information is available, and they need to remember to take the damn umbrella outside. So it's usually in my mind, the way I see it is problem, what do I have to do to solve it? How do I get the information that the person needs? How do I get them that information? Is like how I would kind of summarize that. So you might be asking, Rahat, how exactly does this help me get a job? Because that's what you're actually here for. Take your experience and turn them into stories. I kind of mentioned this before. Look at the process. Talk about the process of how you encountered this problem and looked up different ways to solve it. Talk about different considerations you took for the tech you used. When I was thinking through this talk and how I wanted to present it, I was like, okay, what do I know that helps me send out text-based? I can send text from code. I did a Google search. I found Twilio. I decided that Twilio was pretty good because they were well documented, well supported, pretty popular. And these are when, like, in an interview, you're asked why you chose a particular technology. These are different things you can, tell them. The documentation is great, made it easy for me to implement into what I was building. It solved the exact use case for what I needed to add value for. So you've got a whole conversation right there of like why you chose something, of like why you chose to learn this specific technology and how it added value to somebody. What did you learn? Talk about what you learned. So in my example, I would have maybe learned about cron jobs, like I mentioned before. I would have maybe learned about progressive web apps, depending on which route I was taking. I would, explain the process for how I learned about this new tech in order to add value to other people's lives. There are other variations that you can take to this approach to kind of enhance it. First, working with other developers. When you're on the job, you're not always going to be heads down with headphones on and just coding. A lot of the time, you're going to have to be talking to other developers, figuring out how to work together, doing code reviews, giving each other feedback and things like that. So if you can find other developers to work with, that's awesome. Second thing, working with non-developers. Again, when you're on the job, you're not just going to be working with developers. You might have to work with people on product, people on design, maybe marketing, if that's like kind of what your job kind of entails on that side. And another way to kind of like go through this whole like teamwork kind of process is try to see if you can contribute to an existing open source project. Most open source projects, I kind of view them as products. They're like a product doesn't have to be something that you pay for. It just has to be something that adds value to someone's life. So it's a lot of open source projects should be paid for, but they are adding constant value to all of our lives as web developers. So those are great places to start when you're wanting to work with others and take this approach in that kind of way. Now you might be thinking, how do I find other people to work with? A few places to look. General tech communities, Code Newbie, Virtual Coffee. If you're part of, Collab Lab, that's an awesome place probably to look. Some specialized tech communities like Black Tech Twitter, Vets Who Code, Muslims in Tech. When I had started kind of wanting to build something out for like a little bit for my mosque and some like Islamic kind of stuff, I looked at Muslims in Tech, kind of like got feedback from other Muslims in the tech world. So like having those specialized communities, if you're like wanting to build something within those niches, are great to have as well. Alumni groups, if you're part of a boot camp or a graduate from a boot camp, a lot of them have like alumni Slack groups or some type of like networking thing where you can talk to other alumni. If you went like the college route, look up some college alumni. And even if you went through like the self-taught kind of route, there are lots of online programs like Free Code Camp and things like that people have gone through. There are meetups that kind of support it. So you can like meet other people who are either going through or have gone through that curriculum. So you have like kind of a point of intersection there to like kind of talk to them and see, if you want to build something with them. Now, I glossed over a little bit of like how to go into and look at the different, like figure out what tech that you might want to use. That's like a whole other talk. But I did want to give like a little bit of a summary of like different type of tech that can help you like deliver pretty quickly. Some of my favorites. So I'm personally like a very front end focused developer. I do some back end, but front end is where my strengths are. So I'll usually reach for something like Supabase, AWS Amplify, or MongoDB Realm, because as a front end engineer, it just makes it much easier for me to work on full stack applications with this type of technology. These are technologies that basically manage your whole backend for you, usually give you some like helper functions for authentication, for interacting with the database and everything like that. And with that, like I can kind of like not worry too much about the backend and focus on like the front end where my strengths are. Look at different UI libraries. There are cool ones like Chakra UI, Tailwind, Bootstrap. And these are useful for both front end and back end developers. For front end devs, not all of us are designers. And if you're also a designer and a front end dev, then I'm very jealous of you. I wish I was that, but I am not. So I love these type of UI libraries that help me kind of like make something that's visually pleasing. And I don't have to think about designing too many things. These are also great for backend devs because you can go in and just like take like a few templates from these different libraries and just like put up something that looks pretty nice and focus on your backend stuff. Templates and boilerplates. It's fine not to start from scratch every single time you're building something. Don't worry about doing the same thing over and over and over again. If you've done it once, you've done it twice, great. Don't bother doing it again. Because a lot of the times when you're going into a job, you're probably not going to be starting from scratch. You're going to be starting from you're going to have a starting point. You're going to have other people who've already written code in that code base. So I like to use templates and boilerplates as a way to kind of like learn how someone else has set something up and see if I can like build on top of that. And then the last thing, using stuff like Vercel, Netlify, or Amplify hosting to just get your project out there. DevOps is like a whole other realm that I haven't even spoken about in this talk. And I like to just not think about it and build something and just put it out there and not worry about things. So this type of technology kind of helps you deliver on that front as well. What if no one uses my product? So there's a couple different ways to approach this specific problem. And it depends on kind of you and what you want to do. Maybe maybe you want to go the entrepreneurial route, try to do some more marketing for your product, maybe do some user interviews, maybe really like take that somewhere and like build something really cool out of it. Maybe that doesn't really matter to you, and that's okay if no one uses your product, because you still have something really cool to put onto your portfolio, and you still have a bunch of skills that you've learned. You still have like a bunch of, you know, stories that you can tell to your just whoever you're interviewing with. But yeah, thank you for coming to this talk. Really appreciate it. These are the places again to find me online if you ever want to talk about any product ideas you have. If you want to go over like any, I don't know, if you're like looking for your first job and you just want to chat, have any like set up like a mock interview or anything like that. I usually am open to that kind of thing. And yeah, thank you for attending.
Nice. I love this. It's like it's just such a powerful mindset shift to think in terms of, you know, like not like what is the thing I'm building, what's the tech involved, like, but to think of like what does a user need, like how do I fulfill a need, right? And it's like instead of like, I don't know, it kind of feels like to me like when I do that, when I actually focus on it that way, kind of pulls me into the project. You know, like there are real problems you're trying to solve and everything. So I love this whole approach.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like sometimes when I'm thinking about why I'm passionate about technology, I think of like problem solving, and it sometimes feels like it's this really specific thing, like solving a function, but that's not what I mean sometimes. And just the way you framed that, like really expanded how I'm able to talk about it. Because when you were like, yeah, you build products to solve problems, like we're trying to add value to people's lives, and like that's kind of what I mean. And I just was like so thankful. I was actually taking notes being like, I need to reframe cover letters to like expand on problem solving in this way of actually trying to add value to people's lives by building tech products. So I was so grateful.
Awesome. Glad that helped.
I'd be interested, Rahat, to hear about the products you like, Windor, or even those kind of micro startups. Like, what were those? What were the problems you were trying to solve with those?
Yeah, I mean, with Windor specifically, it's more so some like personal things that I've gone through with like kind of take care of my own mental health and things like that. And so as I was doing that, I would like look at different applications and try to find ones that would like help me on what there's a specific type of therapy I was doing with my therapist called cognitive behavioral therapy. And I wanted to kind of continue doing that like outside of therapy. And while they did exist, they didn't exist in the way that I wanted them to. So that was kind of like one of those points I mentioned, like take something that exists and like change it or build it in a way that you want. And that's how I kind of like started on Windor. Like there's just stuff out there that wasn't exactly how I wanted it to be. And that's how I started building it there. For my other two projects, one of them is pretty closely related to this talk. It's like about, it's one I've just started recently called Heart Up. It's about like kind of keeping track of your achievements and goals and looking at things that you want to improve on and having like stories ready for like job interviews or looking at promotion cycles and reviews and having things kind of prepared for that. Because it's really hard to kind of, when you get to that point, to come up with things that you've done maybe in the past year or two. So like keeping track of those things as you go in a way to like aggregate all that together.
That's cool. I'm actually in the middle of writing performance reviews for my team at work. So like, I wish they were all using that. Just like give me a dump of all the things they've done. It's very cool. Yep. Yeah, I love and that whole approach too of just like solving a need for yourself. Like it's then at least you have one user, you know, yeah. And like one real user, and you're motivated to kind of solve the problem. So it's a great way to go about it. Question in the chat.
Cool. Which is the best platform to find open source projects? I think GitHub. If you like do a search for like open issues, if it's like your first time, they have like different labels of like first good issue or something like that. So you can look at stuff like that. Those are usually like a little bit like easier to tackle. And like they're usually like open for, beginners to actually go in and contribute on that end. And usually for a lot of open source projects, when they have those type of labels, usually people will probably like give you, feedback and advice on your pull requests. So you'll probably learn a bunch if you're able to get that in. Yeah, definitely.
I have a question for you, Rahat.
Yep.
And thank you also for the presentation. Those are a lot of good tips, and I really appreciate it. So I wanted to ask you, how do you decide like when to go with a tutorial or when not to? One of the pros I see sometimes, I know and I get the fact that you have to keep it balanced. Like you can't do only tutorials, but there's also tutorials could also be good from the angle of there are certain instructors, they're great, and just by going, like, you save yourself a lot of time by hearing a lot of like tips and a lot of things that it will take you so much more time to come to those conclusions. So how do you decide when to go with a tutorial versus just go with documentation alone?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in the beginning, I definitely leaned on tutorials a lot, just to like get me started, especially when like I had just like kind of finished boot camp and I was like kind of unsure fully how to like start tackling like new projects on my own. So if you're kind of just wanting to have that initial guided approach of like building just a couple of things with, with someone giving you proper tips and everything like that, definitely that's a great time to use tutorials. I would say after you've done that maybe once or twice, to try to even like rebuild those same kind of applications on your own, because now you've already built it once. You've gone through like whatever tips there are. If you go back and build it again without like looking at the tutorial, or just maybe like referencing the project you've already built and like using that kind of as like documentation to build something new, I feel that's one of the things that really helped me to kind of like step away from tutorials a little bit. And like, I guess like one other thing that I would definitely mention is like when you're getting that advice and that, those good practices from like a really good instructor, you're also missing out on like the hours of frustration and like yelling and cursing at the computer that they did before they were actually able to record that and give that to you. And like that's where you're probably going to do most of your learning, of just going in, trying it, and just like experiencing that yourself and like understanding why certain things are, best practices or whatever, because like you've gone through like why certain methods of doing something is frustrating or not.
Yeah, that's a great point there. And also, yeah, get it stuck and get it frustrated. Sometimes that really like you really learn the lesson, like you remember, you'll be able to remember a lot better than just cruising over a tutorial.
Definitely. Yeah. It's the stuff that like I was pulling my hair out for like hours and then figuring it out that like I now always remember, because I never want to go through that again. So.
Yeah. If you manage to push through, then you really learn a lesson.
Yeah.
Cool.
I've got a question for you, Rahat.
Hey, Greg.
Hey. Thanks for sharing your words of wisdom with us. Appreciate it. And it's a helpful refocus in mindset. I think someone else had mentioned that already about, it can be fun to have little side projects, but like that's not really going to move your professional needle forward a lot, about changing the mindset of like, I'm producing a helpful product that can be helpful for somebody, and starting with me, what is helpful to me, and then kind of going from there. So I appreciate that. My question is, how and when do you worry about copywriting, patenting, LLCing, those types of whatever the appropriate path is? I wouldn't even know. But when do you start to worry about that kind of stuff? When you want to start to maybe protect your idea, your project or your product?
Yeah, I would say, like, in my case, the only one of my projects I've really protected, I guess, is Windor. Like, I've went in and we actually created like a company behind that and everything. And that was really only after, not when we launched, because we haven't fully launched yet, but after like we've gotten through like a good portion of like building things out, planning things out, and having sort of like a roadmap of like what we're going to be doing over the next year or so. And when we realized like we had all this kind of planned out first over such a long period of time, we just thought, okay, this is probably a good time to about patents and all that. We didn't really do anything like that, but yeah, I mean, there are really cool tools like Stripe Atlas that kind of like help you do a lot of like the business side of things without having to think about it, because I really don't want to think about the business side of things.
Thank you. What was the name you said?
Stripe Atlas.
Of that? Stripe Atlas?
Yeah. So it's a
Cool.
product from Stripe.
Cool.
The question in the
Appreciate it.
chat:
How do you
how do you deal with the amount of scope, time frame for doing it? Like, I wouldn't want to try to make a massive project but never finish. In terms of SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound, I think is what SMART stands for. How do you ensure it's achievable?
Yeah. So the last product I mentioned, Hardup, I built that in 3 days. So that was when like I really forced myself to like really understand what an MVP is, and like just getting something that does like the most minimal thing that meets whatever the requirements that I wanted, to happen actually happen. So for that, I knew I wanted a platform for like making sure that somebody can sign up. They can sign up, they can go in, record an achievement, and then maybe add some more information about it afterwards. And then after they've done that, they can just look at all the achievements, and that's it. There's a ton of other stuff that I want to accomplish there, but that is like the main thing. Just like being able to like get into the website, write something down and save it. And you really have to like break it down to like what is, I guess, like the meat of the maybe not the meat, yeah, the meat of the project. Like what infrastructure needs to be there for everything else to work. And that was like the thing that needed to be there first. I just needed people to go in and be able to save some stuff. So when you really break it down and like you forget, like you have to like force yourself to forget about all the other flashy cool ideas that you might have. And on day one, that was very hard for me to do. But once we got to day two and I realized I had until the next day to get it done, that's what helped me to get those flashy ideas out of my head. I feel like what's usually helpful is having sometimes like a non-technical person to talk to, because they'll just tell you like, yeah, I just need to go in and do this thing. Whereas like someone more technical might be like, hey, let's do this, let's add this other thing, let's add this framework or that framework. And sometimes you just need to step away from that and just think really about like, what does the person using this need to be able to do to make everything else work?
Yeah, as you were describing like the umbrella thing, right? Like I spent a lot of time with John like thinking about how to cut scope and stuff, and I was like, how could you deliver that thing sort of incrementally? Like maybe the first thing you do is just like hard code a location, but then later in you add like the ability for like to like have the user provide that manually, and then maybe actually track their actual location through an API or something. It's like there are incremental ways to kind of march towards a fully functioning thing, where you don't have to, you don't have to build it all like right off the bat, because it's like too overwhelming. But that whole thing, like, that's a super valuable skill. Like as a developer, if you can bring that to a team, there's two things there. Like, take a big problem, break it down into smaller problems. So decomposition, and then if you can help understand, we can cut scope and still meet the user's goal. Like that's gold for a development team.
Rahat, to that end, do you have like an approach that works for you of like breaking down, like you have this idea for an app, are you going to sit down and try and like, create like a sketch and wireframe of how you want the front end to look before you start thinking of what to build out, or like what's your approach to that?
Yeah. I usually take a pen and paper and just like sketch it out, draw it out. I know there's like a bunch of different like tools you can use for that type of thing. They all confuse me, so I just stick to pen and paper. Sometimes I'll even just like pull up different websites of like stuff that looks similar to what I kind of want to do, and see if I can take like little pieces of what they're doing, kind of mix and match and figure out what I want to create from there. And in the beginning, like I won't worry about like what it really, like, I guess if it's aesthetically pleasing or whatever, just like get something on the screen. Like it can even just be like a page from the 90s with like no CSS styling or whatever. If it just like has like the thing that I was building, the very first version of it was just like an input form. You put stuff in there and then some text came up at the bottom, and that was it. And then I started adding some styling after that. So just like,
Oh yeah, these are like the Harken videos on LinkedIn. I saw you posting those.
yeah,
You have those like tiny updates.
yeah. It's just like, don't even worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about those kind of flashy stuff. Just put something on the page, on your piece of paper, and yeah, go from there.
Cool.
Have you done any freelancing? I heard also as an alternative idea of people, like instead of doing projects, just doing freelancing, and that's something that you can still show. You have that extra pressure to make it right, and you might make a little money like that on the side also. But that's also something that you could show and tangible that will help you like learn. I learned that from someone, and it seemed like a very good tip. I've considered it. Have you done it?
I haven't personally done a lot of freelancing. I've done like some volunteer work here and there, like when I was first kind of trying to get into things. So I couldn't really tell you too much about freelancing, but it's definitely, that's definitely work. That's experience. If you're able to go in, like someone pays you to build something for them, that's a whole job you can put on your resume. So yeah, that's definitely an awesome way to build up experience.
Yeah, that's what I did my first year with web development, was just freelance for a year. And it's like a social proof, right? Like a company, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable hiring you if they've seen that someone else has paid you to do that type of work, so yeah, definitely freelancing is a great way to get into the industry and gain experience. What else? Any other questions for Rahat? I've heard you're supposed to wait 15 seconds, but it's like, feels like an eternity to wait that long. All right, if there's nothing else, anything else that you wanted to say before we kind of wrap it up? I know what Rachel wants to say.
Okay.
But I was asking Rahat, sorry.
No, I think pretty much cover everything. Like I mentioned before, if you ever want to chat about any products or anything you want to, toss around ideas about or have any questions about tech related stuff, I'm happy to chat. I'm open on LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever.
Cool. Rachel?
Well, I do think now there's another question in the chat. So I was gonna, before I make my announcement, I was gonna do that. Sahil's asking, how many projects did you have to show when you were hired?
I don't think there's really a magic number or a specific number. I think even if you have like one or two, if you can like, what really matters is just like the stories you can tell from them of like what you learned, the process, and like just like your experience with if it was like working on your own or working with other people, whatever it was. That's really the more important side of things rather than like how many you've done. So yeah, I'd focus more on like those rather than like a number. You can even have like one project that you've, let's say you're like a bootcamp student and you did like one of those capstone projects. If you took like your capstone project and just like kept iterating on it and adding stuff to it, that's awesome. That's like a great way to like kind of continue on learning and building up and stuff.
I think that's good advice.
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna make an announcement. We've been doing the Tech Talks every other week for the past almost year, right? Since
But almost a year. I don't know how long, like a long time.
yeah, I think they started. But we're actually gonna move to make them monthly now. So it's gonna starting this month, it's gonna be the second Tuesday of each month. So then the next one is gonna be the second Tuesday in September. I think I don't have the exact date right now. And then second Tuesday, so forth, throughout the whole year. So yeah, just wanted to make that announcement.
Yeah, second Wednesday. I think you said
Wednesday,
Tuesday.
sorry, I did
And you-
say Tuesday.
Yeah.
I meant
And you were cutting out a little bit. Your internet's maybe a little spotty. So just for clarity, like yeah, we've been doing it every 2 weeks. We're going to move to monthly. Kind of for the time being. We'll see if we ever want to go back to every 2 weeks, but it's a lot to manage, right? Like a lot of speakers to find to try to line this stuff up every 2 weeks. But somehow we managed to do it for a long time, and we're super grateful to all the speakers who've come through. But yeah, monthly will make it a little easier for us to administer. It's more like every other meetup does it monthly, right? So anyway, second Wednesday of each month. Hope to see y'all back here the next time.
thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for doing this, Rahat. Appreciate it. Yep.
Thanks, Rahat.
Cool. Thank you.